Listen to me. Sometimes the loudest thing you could ever hear is your own silence. In a world where everybody's talking, posting, and proving, few are listening. We live in a time where noise is everywhere. People trying to show off success they haven't earned, relationships they don't respect, and goals they don't grind for. But I'm telling you, silence is sacred. When you get quiet, you hear what others miss. You hear heart. You hear your purpose. You hear God's whisper saying, this is where you're meant to be. See, silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because it's in the silence where warriors sharpen their swords. Champions don't need to announce they're working, they just show up different when the lights come on. Most people lose focus, they can't stay silent, they need distractions, they need validation. But when you learn to be still, when you learn to be okay with being alone with your thoughts, that's when transformation begins. Silence teaches patience. Silence teaches patience. Silence teaches self-control. Silence allows you to hear the lessons hidden behind failure and pain. Stop explaining your dreams to people who are asleep. Stop defending your purpose to people who don't understand the process. The best thing you can do sometimes is go silent, work in the dark, and let your results make the noise up. Listen, the storm doesn't scare the mountain because it stands firm, quiet, still, and unshaken. Be like that mountain, let the world rage around you, but stay grounded. Because when your spirit is calm, your decisions become clear, and your energy becomes unstoppable. So today I challenge you, step away from the noise, turn off the chaos, sit in the silence and reconnect with what truly matters. Because silence is not empty, it's full of answers. And those who respect silence command power when they finally speak. Silence is sacred. Silence reveals purpose. Most people never slow down long enough to hear what their life is actually trying to tell. They wake up, rush to their phones, scroll through everyone else's life, and before they even take a breath, they're already lost in comparison, in noise, in distraction. But the truth is, you cannot find your direction in chaos. You cannot discover your calling in the crowd. Purpose doesn't scream at you, it whispers. It waits for you in the quiet moments when no one is looking. That's where the real journey begins, inside the silence. See, some of you think you're lost. You think God forgot about you. You think your dream is gone, but it's not gone, it's buried under noise. You can't hear your assignment because you won't slow down enough to listen. You're surrounded by so many voices telling you what to be, what to do, who to follow, what's trending, what's success, that you've forgotten your own voice. And that's why silence is powerful, because silence reveals what's already inside of you. It removes the unnecessary. It strips away the fake. It humbles your ego. And in that stillness, the truth shows up. When I was broke, homeless, and sleeping in abandoned buildings, there was a lot of noise in my head. Anger, frustration, fear. I kept asking, why me? I wanted answers, I wanted help, but I couldn't find peace. It wasn't until I sat alone one night, no distractions, no people, no excuses, that something shifted, and I got quiet. I stopped blaming, and for the first time, I heard something I never heard before. My own purpose calling out to me. It said, get up. You were made for more. That moment didn't come through noise or a crowd. It came through silence. That's where I discovered who I was supposed to be. When you stop talking and start listening, you start hearing truth. Because sometimes you can't hear purpose because your pain is too loud. You can't hear your dream because your doubt is shouting. You can't hear your calling because your environment keeps interrupting it. But when you silence the outside, the inside begins to speak. And that inner voice, when you truly tune into it, will guide you to the life you were built for. You see, purpose is not found in activity, it's found in alignment. It's not about how much you're doing, it's about how connected you are to your mission. And connection requires quiet. That's why some of the most successful people spend time alone. They take moments of solitude because they know that every great vision starts with reflection. You can't build anything meaningful if you don't first understand why you're building it. The why comes from silence. Most people run from silence because silence makes them face themselves. When it's quiet, you can't hide behind your job, your friends, your music, or your phone. You have to look at your reflection and confront your truth. That's uncomfortable, but that's where growth lives. Because when you face yourself, you stop pretending. You stop running, and when you stop running, you can finally start walking toward purpose. Silence reveals purpose because it helps you see what matters and what doesn't. When you step away from noise, you realize half the things that used to stress you out don't even matter. The opinions, the approval, the competition, all distraction, all distraction. Silence shows you the difference between what feeds your soul and what drains it. It teaches you what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It gives you clarity, and clarity is power. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need to explain your vision to people who can't see it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and stay quiet. Not every season is meant for talking. Some seasons are meant for listening, learning, and building. Let your silence be your preparation ground. Let your stillness be your sharpening time. Because when it's time to move, you'll move with precision and purpose. Live in a time where people are addicted to noise. They equate noise with progress. But just because it's loud doesn't mean it's right. Just because it's busy doesn't mean it's productive. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history came through moments of quiet reflection. Think about it. Great inventors, leaders, artists, they all had seasons of solitude. They went away to think, to pray, to reset. Because silence creates space for creativity. It allows the mind to breathe, to connect dots that chaos can. You want to know your purpose? Get silent. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Stop replaying the past. Stop worrying about the future. Sit still in the present and listen, because purpose speaks softly. It doesn't chase you, it invites you. And you can't hear it if you're constantly surrounded by distraction. Silence will show you what truly moves you. It will remind you of what you loved before the world told you to be practical. It will reconnect you with the dream that made your heart race before life got complicated. In silence, your authentic self comes alive. You stop performing for the world and start listening to your spirit. That's where real strength comes from. Not from proving yourself, but from knowing yourself. Some people think silence is loneliness, but it's not. Silence is intimacy with your soul. It's communion with your creator. It's where you hear divine direction. It's where you get confirmation that you're on the right path. Every time I faced a major decision in my life, I've had to go quiet. Not ask everybody, not post about it, not overthink it. Just get silent. And every single time, that silence gave me clarity that no conversation gives. Sometimes God won't speak until you stop. Until you stop filling every second with sound, he'll stay silent. Because he's waiting for you to make room to listen. And when you do, you'll hear him say exactly what you've been searching for, your purpose. When you find purpose through silence, you stop being reactive. You stop chasing trends. You stop copying others. You stop comparing. You move differently. You walk with calm confidence because you know your assignment. You're not desperate for applause. You're not begging for validation. You're centered. And when you're centered, nothing can shake you. Silence is where direction becomes destiny. It's where you align your thoughts with your goals. It's where you reframe failure as feedback and pain as preparation. Because when you get quiet, you realize every struggle had a message. Every setback had a lesson. Every disappointment was redirection. But you only stopped talking long enough to listen. You've been running up to listen. You've been running around trying to find answers from everyone else. You've been seeking motivation from videos, books, people. But the truth is, the answer is already inside you. It's just waiting for you to be still. You keep asking, oh, what should I do? But silence is saying, you already know. Deep down, your purpose is written in your heart. The problem is you've been drowning it in noise. So take a break from the world. Take a break from explaining yourself. Take a break from overthinking. Sit in silence, even if it's uncomfortable. Because that discomfort is your soul detoxing from distraction. That's the moment of awakening. That's when purpose begins to rise from within you. When you learn to love silence, you learn to love clarity. When you learn to love clarity, you start walking in purpose. And when you walk in purpose, you stop existing. You start living. Every move becomes intentional. Every day becomes meaningful. You stop wasting energy and start channeling it. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, use me. That's the shift that happens in silence. You don't need 1,000 voices telling you what your purpose is. You just need to get quiet enough to hear the one voice that matters. Because silence doesn't just reveal purpose, it reveals peace. And once you have peace, nothing can stop you. You'll be unstoppable, not because you're the loudest, but because you're the most aligned. So slow down, breathe, listen. Let the silence speak. Let it guide you back to who you were before fear, doubt, and noise got in the way. Your purpose has been waiting patiently in the quiet corners of your heart. Go meet it there, because silence isn't empty, it's sacred. And in that sacred silence, your true purpose will finally reveal itself. Silence builds strength. Strength isn't forged in noise or applause. It isn't born in the spotlight or among the crowd. True strength is built when nobody's watching, when the world is asleep, and you're still grinding, still believing, still holding on when every part of you wants to quit. That's where the transformation happens, in silence, in the hidden places, in the moments no one else will ever see. Most people think strength is loud. They think power means dominating the room, shouting your goals, announcing your grind. But the strongest people are often the quietest ones. They don't need to talk about what they're doing because the discipline already speaks for them. Silence becomes their training ground, their weapon, their shield. When you learn to embrace silence, you stop needing external motivation. You stop waiting for people to cheer you on. You stop depending on validation. You start drawing power from within. And that's real strength. When your fire doesn't come from noise, it comes from purpose. Because here's the truth. Silence is not weakness. It's preparation. Every great fighter trains in silence before they step into the ring. Every great musician practices in solitude before stepping on stage. Every champion suffers in secret before they win in public. You can't skip that part. The quiet seasons are not punishment, they're preparation. When you're in a silent season, when nobody's calling, when nothing seems to be happening, that's when most people give up. But the strong ones, they stay. They stay in the silence. They use that time to grow, to strengthen their mind, to build their character. Because what silence does is strip you of comfort. It removes distraction. It forces you to depend on nothing but your will and your faith. And when you can keep moving in silence, that's when you know you built something real. Think about nature for a second. The seed doesn't make noise when it breaks through the soil. The tree doesn't shout while it's growing. The mountain doesn't boast about its height. Growth happens quietly, but just because you can't hear doesn't mean it isn't happening. The same goes for your life. Just because it's silent doesn't mean it's stagnant. You might not see the results yet, but strength is forming in the unseen. That's the beauty of silence. It works in the dark. It refines you quietly, steadily, deeply. The reason most people never reach their potential is because they can't handle the quiet. They need constant noise, constant approval, constant results. But silence requires patience, and patience requires trust. It means believing that even though you don't see it, something powerful is taking shape inside you. Silence trains your endurance. It's easy to act strong when people are clapping. But can you stay strong when there's no one around? Can you keep pushing when no one's noticing? That's what separates the average from the great. In silence, you build emotional strength. You learn how to process pain without running to distraction. You learn how to sit with failure, learn from it and move forward. You stop reacting and start responding. Because when you spend enough time in silence, you stop being controlled by your emotions. You master them. You become calm in chaos, steady in storms, unshaken by noise. That kind of strength doesn't come from talking. It comes from training your spirit in silence. You can't become strong without struggle, and you can't hear your inner voice while everything else is shouting. Silence gives you the space to wrestle with your weaknesses. It exposes the areas that need work. It humbles you, refines you, and rebuilds you. Sometimes silence will break you down before it builds you up. But that's what strength is. Being broken but not destroyed. Being tested but not defeated. There's a reason why warriors spend time in solitude before battle. They understand that silence sharpens focus. When everything around you is still, your sense is heightened. You start noticing what matters. You start seeing what others miss. Silence builds that inner alertness that keeps you grounded even when life gets loud. It teaches you to move with intention instead of impulse. Every step, every choice, every word becomes calculated. That's strength, control, power, not chaos. Most people confuse silence with inactivity. They think if you're not posting, not talking, not showing off your progress, then you're not doing anything. But silence is where the real work happens. It's where you read, plan, train, and grow. It's where you confront your flaws and develop your discipline. You're not inactive. You're investing in your foundation, and when that foundation is strong, nothing can shake it. That's why silence is sacred. It's the space where greatness is built. When I was starting out, nobody believed in me. I didn't have followers. I didn't have applause. All I had was silence and a dream. Let me tell you something, that silence made me strong. It taught me how to rely on my grind instead of people's opinions. It taught me to keep showing up even when nobody noticed. Every morning, I was in that quiet space, building my message, sharpening my skills, fighting my doubts. And that's why, when the world finally heard my voice, it had power, because it was forged in silence. When you work in silence, you learn to trust the process. You stop rushing results. You realize that strength isn't built overnight. It's built repetition by repetition, sacrifice by sacrifice, decision by decision. And the beauty of silent work is that when your moment comes, you'll be ready. You won't have to fake it. You won't have to force it. You'll flow in your purpose because you already paid the price in private. That's why the quiet grind is so valuable. It creates authenticity. Silence also protects your energy. It keeps your focus intact. When you talk too much about your plans, you waste energy explaining instead of executing. You open yourself up to doubt, judgment, and distraction. But when you move in silence, you stay centered. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You just show up, work, and let your results do the talking. There's nothing stronger than quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need validation because it's rooted in preparation. The gem is silent before it opens. The mind is quiet before a breakthrough. The heart beats steady before a big moment. There's a rhythm to silence. It's the rhythm of becoming. Strength isn't built in noise. It's revealed through it. So if you're in a quiet season right now, don't get discouraged. Don't think you're stuck. You're being prepared. You're being refined. The silence is your teacher, your trainer, your text. When you truly understand that silence builds strength, you stop fighting it. You start using it. You start waking up earlier, staying up later, creating space to reflect, to grow, to build, to build. You stop fearing being alone because you realize solitude is not isolation, it's incubation. You're developing something powerful, something that will speak for itself when the time is right. And when you finally step out of that silent season, you'll notice something. You're stronger, calmer, wiser, more grounded. You'll look back and realize that silence didn't just build your strength. It built your identity. You became someone who doesn't need noise to feel valuable, who doesn't need approval to keep going. You became self-sufficient, self-driven, and spiritually stable. That's the kind of strength that lasts. Because noise fades, applause stops, crowds move on. But what you build in silence stays with you. It becomes part of who you are. It shapes your character. It gives you roots so deep that no storm can pull you out of your purpose. So don't be afraid of silence. Don't run from it. Embrace it. Use it. Let it teach you patience. Let it strengthen your mind. Let it train your heart. Because when the time comes to speak, to act, to rise, you'll move with power that was built in quiet places. You'll walk in the rooms with unshakable energy because you know where your strength came from. The world celebrates noise, but the universe rewards discipline. And discipline grows in silence. Every rep in the gym, every early morning study, every lonely night of prayer or planning, that strength being built. The world won't see it now, but one day they'll see the results. And when they ask how you did it, you'll smile because the answer won't be words. It'll be your silence. Silence builds strength because it removes the need for recognition. You stop performing for approval. You start performing for purpose. You stop talking about what you're going to do and start doing it. You stop reacting to everything around you and start responding with wisdom. That's the mark of true strength. Not how loud you are, but how centered you remain when the world gets noisy. So take your silent season seriously. It's not punishment. It's preparation. It's not absence. It's alignment. Keep building, keep working, keep believing. Because when the noise fades, the strong will remain. And those who learn to find peace and power in silence, they're the ones who rise, unshaken, unstoppable, and unbreakable. Silence builds that kind of strength, the kind that lasts forever. Silence filters noise. Every day we are surrounded by voices trying to tell us who we are, what we should do, and how we should live. There's noise from society, noise from social media, noise from opinions, from doubt, from fear, from comparison. It's constant. And if you're not careful, that noise can drown out your truth. It can make you forget who you are and what you were created to do. That's why silence is not just peace. It's power, because silence acts like a filter. It separates what matters from what doesn't. It clears the fog so you can finally see the road in front of you. When life gets loud, you start to lose clarity. You start reacting instead of reflecting. You start reacting instead of reflecting. You start chasing everything that looks good instead of what's meant for you. But when you slow down and embrace silence, you begin to sort through the noise. You start asking, oh, what's real? What's true? What's mine? Silence helps you see through illusions. It helps you notice how much of what you hear daily is just distraction, people pretending, complaining, trying to project an image instead of living with intention. When you stay silent, you step out of that chaos. You start to see things as they really are. Silence teaches you how to listen with depth. When you're not talking all the time, you can hear what's behind the words. You start noticing tone, emotion, energy. You become sensitive to truth. You can sense when something aligns with your spirit and when it doesn't. That's why silence is a form of discernment. It filters out deception. It gives you spiritual clarity to know who belongs in your life and who doesn't, what opportunities are for you and which ones are distractions. The more you cultivate silence, the more you recognize that not everything that glitters is gold. Not every voice deserves space in your mind, and not every battle is yours to fight. Most people never find peace because they don't know how to turn off the noise. They keep scrolling, keep talking, keep listening to everybody else's version of success, happiness, and purpose. They let the world's noise set their standard, but silence helps you take back control. It gives you the power to say, oh wait, I don't need to absorb everything. I don't need to react to every comment. I don't need to carry every opinion. When you live in silence, you become selective with what you allow in your mind. You realize your peace is worth protecting. The truth is, noise confuses you. It keeps you busy, distracted, and disconnected from your inner compass. But silence recenters you. It brings you back to alignment. It's like tuning an instrument. The noise represents chaos, but silence helps you find your note again. You can't play beautiful music if your instrument is out of tune. You can't live with purpose if your mind is full of static. You have to pause, breathe, and let silence filter through the mess so you can find your rhythm again. When you start filtering the noise, you also start filtering people. Some people only bring drama. Some bring doubt. Some bring energy that drains you instead of feeding you. Silence helps you identify those patterns. It teaches you the difference between voices that guide you and voices that distract you. You stop letting everyone's opinions weigh the same. You stop explaining your decisions to people who don't understand your mission. Silence reminds you that not everyone deserves access to your energy. You learn to say less, move smart, and keep your focus clean. There's a reason why the most powerful individuals in the world often retreat into silence. They meditate. They disconnect. They take breaks from noise because they know that clarity requires stillness. You can't make great decisions in chaos. You need space to think, to process, to reflect. The brain and spirit both function better in silence. That's when creativity flourishes. That's when intuition becomes stronger. That's when direction becomes clear. Silence is not a lack of sound. It's the environment that allows wisdom to grow. Sometimes silence will feel uncomfortable because you've been conditioned to equate it with loneliness. But it's not loneliness. It's detox. It's your mind cleaning itself of unnecessary clutter. It's your spirit releasing emotional toxins. You start realizing how much energy you wasted on noise that never served you. And as silence filters that noise, you begin to see your priorities shift. You care less about opinions and more about impact. You stop chasing validation and start chasing growth. You stop reacting to everything that happens around you and start responding with calmness and clarity. You can't hear your intuition when your environment is filled with noise. You can't hear God's direction when you're constantly talking, worrying, or comparing. Silence is the bridge between confusion and clarity. It's the pause between chaos and understanding. Every time you choose silence over noise, you sharpen your intuition. You learn to trust your gut, and that inner trust is what leads to strength, confidence, and peace. We live in a time where everyone's trying to be heard. Everyone's talking, but few are listening. Everyone's making noise, but few are making sense. Silence separates you from that crowd. It gives your words meaning when you finally decide to speak. Because people who understand silence don't waste words. They use them wisely. They don't speak just to fill the air. They speak to bring truth, power, and purpose. When you allow silence to filter the noise, your vision becomes clear. You stop trying to do everything. You stop chasing trends. You focus on your lane. You stop worrying about what they're doing over there because you finally understand your path is unique. Silence filters out comparison. It reminds you that you're not behind. You're in process. It tells you that timing is different for everyone. And your breakthrough will come when you're ready, not when the world demands it. There will be times when silence feels like isolation. You'll wonder why no one understands you, why it feels like nobody's there. But that silence is doing its work. It's removing the noise so you can hear the truth of your journey. The people meant for you will understand your silence. The ones who don't will leave. And that's okay, because they were part of the noise. Silence doesn't take people away. It reveals who belongs. Silence also filters internal noise, the thoughts that limit you, the fears that whisper lies. When you get quiet, you start hearing the negative patterns in your mind. I can't do it. I'm not enough. I'll fail. But in silence, you have the chance to confront those lies and replace them with truth. You start telling yourself, I'm capable, I'm growing, I'm becoming. You realize most of your battles were never external. They were internal. And silence becomes your tool to win those battles. Silence isn't just about the absence of sound. It's about creating mental space. When you stop reacting to everything, you conserve energy. You think more clearly. You make wiser decisions. You start to see solutions that you couldn't see when your mind was cluttered with noise. Problems that once looked impossible suddenly look manageable because your perspective is clear. That's what silence does. It simplifies the complicated. It helps you prioritize what truly matters. You have to protect your silence like treasure because every time you allow noise to invade it, you lose a bit of clarity. Don't let gossip, drama, or negativity rent space in your head. Don't let the news or social media dictate how you feel. Filter it. Choose what you let in. Silence doesn't mean disconnecting from the world. It means being intentional about what deserves your attention. Think about water flowing through a filter. The impurities get caught, and what passes through is pure. Silence works the same way for your soul. The noise, fear, doubt, comparison gets trapped and removed. What remains is truth, peace, and focus. And when your mind and heart are pure, your actions become powerful. You start living from a place of purpose, not pressure. When you learn to filter noise through silence, you start to see the world differently. You don't rush. You don't panic. You observe. You learn. You adapt. That's emotional intelligence. That's wisdom. You no longer get triggered by everything. You no longer chase validation from others. You stay steady because silence trained you to process before you react. And that ability to stay calm while the world gets loud is one of the greatest strengths a person can have. Silence filters noise so you can hear your calling clearly. It helps you separate the voice of fear from the voice of faith. It helps you recognize what's urgent versus what's important. It teaches you that not everything deserves your attention and not every problem deserves your energy. You start living intentionally instead of impulsively. You start moving with purpose instead of pressure. So don't fear silence. Welcome it. Make space for it daily. Start your mornings with quiet reflection. End your nights with stillness. Turn off the world and turn inward. Because every time you do, you'll come out stronger, clearer, and more focused. Silence doesn't take you away from the world. It prepares you to face it. It helps you walk into chaos with calmness, into pressure with peace, and into confusion with clarity. Silence filters noise because it reminds you that your power doesn't come from what's around you. It comes from what's within you. And when you know that, when you truly understand that, you stop being swayed by every sound that tries to pull you off your path. You become grounded, unmovable, unbothered. The noise loses its control over you. So the next time life gets loud, don't shout back. Get silent. Don't fight the noise with more noise. Filter it with stillness. Because silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the presence of strength, focus, and truth. And when you master the art of silence, no amount of noise can ever drown out your purpose again. Silence has a unique way of revealing who we truly are. When you remove the noise, the chaos, and the opinions of others, you're left standing face to face with your raw, unfiltered self. And for many people, that's one of the hardest things to handle because silence strips away the masks. It takes away the applause. It removes the distractions. It forces you to confront your thoughts, your fears, your doubts, and your truth. Most people run from silence because they're afraid of what they'll hear when everything else goes quiet. But silence, if you let it, can become the most honest mirror you'll ever face. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't entertain. It just reflects who you are exactly as you are. When the world is loud, when everyone's shouting for attention, when social media drowns you in endless comparison, silence feels foreign. It feels uncomfortable. You pick up your phone, turn on music, call someone, anything to fill that quiet void, because silence doesn't let you hide. It reveals the cracks in your confidence, the weaknesses in your mindset, the unfinished work in your heart. But that's why it's sacred. That's why it's powerful, because growth doesn't happen in noise. It happens in stillness. Transformation doesn't come from the applause of others. It comes from the moments when no one's watching, when you're alone, wrestling with your truth, and you decide to face it instead of running from it. Think about the greatest breakthroughs in your life. They didn't come when everything around you was loud. They came when you sat still long enough to listen to what your soul was trying to tell you. When you were broken and quiet. When you felt lost and stopped talking long enough to hear the whisper of direction. That's where clarity is born. That's where vision takes shape. Silence allows your spirit to breathe again. It allows the noise of doubt to settle. It lets the dust of chaos clear so you can see what's really there. Without silence, you move through life reacting to everything around you, but never responding from within. There's a deep difference between reaction and response. Reaction is emotional. It's triggered by noise. But response comes from awareness, from stillness, from listening first. You can't hear your purpose if your mind is cluttered with distractions. You can't find peace if you never stop to rest in quiet. That's why successful people, focused people, grounded people, they protect their silence. They know it's in those quiet moments that the best decisions are made, that the deepest healing happens, that the truest voices are heard. You can't lead others if you can't listen to yourself. You can't serve a mission if you can't hear what it demands from you. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of awareness. In silence, your thoughts slow down enough for you to observe them. You begin to realize how many of them are not even yours. They're echoes of what people told you. Fear society placed in you, limits you unconsciously accepted. But when you sit in silence long enough, those voices fade and your true inner voice begins to speak. That voice doesn't shout. It whispers. It's calm, certain, patient. It's been there all along, waiting for you to listen. That's why silence is sacred. It reconnects you with that inner compass. It teaches you to trust yourself again. Most of us have become addicted to noise because noise gives us an escape from accountability. If it's loud enough, you don't have to deal with your own reflection. If you're constantly scrolling, constantly talking, constantly doing, you never have to stop and ask, who am I becoming? But silence doesn't give you that escape, corners you with truth. And though it may hurt at first, it's the kind of pain that heals. It's the kind of confrontation that frees you. Because when you face yourself, when you see your flaws and your strengths clearly, you stop pretending. You stop living for approval. You start living with purpose. Silence also tests your patience. It teaches you discipline. In a world that celebrates speed, silence moves slow. But slow doesn't mean weak. It means intentional. It means learning to sit with a thought until it unfolds into wisdom. It means holding space for your emotions instead of burying them under distraction. It means giving yourself permission to pause without guilt. Because productivity without purpose is just noise disguised as progress. And silence what separates the two. It reminds you that not every movement is meaningful, not every sound is necessary, not every response is worth your energy. When you learn to be comfortable in silence, you stop fearing solitude. You begin to enjoy your own company. You stop depending on others to fill your emptiness because you've learned to fill it with peace. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you stable. People who can stand strong in silence don't need external validation. They already have internal clarity. They move differently. They speak less, but their words carry weight. They act calmly, but their actions create impact because they've mastered the art of listening before they move. In silence, you discover that not every battle needs to be fought. Not every argument needs your voice. Not every opportunity is meant for you. You learn to discern. You learn to discern. You learn to choose your energy wisely. You realize that silence can protect you from saying what doesn't need to be said and doing what doesn't need to be done. That's wisdom, the kind you can't find in books or lectures, only in quiet reflection. Silence refines you. It doesn't just build strength, it builds self-control. There's a sacred strength that grows in you when you can sit quietly with your pain and not run from it. When you can feel disappointment, heartbreak, failure. And instead of numbing it with noise, you allow yourself to listen to what that pain is trying to teach you. Pain speaks in silence. It tells you what needs healing. It shows you what truly matters. It points you toward growth, but you can only hear it when you're willing to listen, when you're not drowning it with distractions. That's why silence isn't comfortable, because healing isn't comfortable. Growth isn't easy, but it's necessary. When you come out of silence, you come out renewed. You speak less but mean more. You move slower but with purpose. You love deeper because you've learned to understand yourself. And that's why silence is not a weakness. It's a strength that few people have the courage to practice. It's where the greatest leaders recharge. It's where visionaries refine their vision. It's where broken people find wholeness again. Silence is the ground where clarity grows and peace takes root. So learn to protect your silence. Don't let every call, every notification, every demand steal that sacred space. Set boundaries. Find moments in your day to disconnect and listen. Whether it's 5 minutes of stillness in the morning or an hour before bed, use that time to check in with your soul. Because the world will always be loud, but you don't have to be. The world will always demand your attention, but your power lies in your ability to choose what you give it to. When you master silence, you master yourself. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. You stop chasing validation and start living with intention. You begin to realize that silence doesn't make you small. It makes you centered. And that's what the world needs more of. People who are centered, people who can think clearly, love deeply, act wisely, and speak only when their words carry purpose. The silence isn't emptiness, it's fullness. It's the space where everything important begins. Vision, heat, purpose. That's why silence is sacred, because it's not the absence of sound, it's the presence of truth. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it's a space where understanding and clarity are born. It's the sacred pause between chaos and wisdom, between impulse and insight. In our world today, where distractions surround us from every direction, phones buzzing, people talking, opinions flying, silence has become a rare luxury. Yet the most powerful breakthroughs in life often come when we step away from the noise long enough to listen to the stillness within, because it's in silence that our thoughts settle, our emotions balance, and our spirit begins to speak clearly. When you slow down and enter silence, you begin to notice how much noise has been controlling your life. The noise of comparison, the noise of fear, the noise of expectations from others, from society, even from yourself. Silence clears that fog. It strips away the voices that tell you who you should be and gives you the space to remember who you truly are. Many people run from silence because it forces them to face what they've been avoiding, their pain, their mistakes, their insecurity. But what they don't realize is that silence isn't there to hurt them. It's there to heal them. It gives them the chance to face the truth, not as a punishment, but as a pathway to freedom. When you give yourself time to sit in silence, you learn how to listen. Not just to what's outside you, but to what's inside you. Most people hear, but very few actually listen. Listening is a deeper act. It's the art of understanding without interrupting, the skill of observing without reacting. Silence teaches you to listen to your intuition, that quiet voice that always knows what's right, even when logic doesn't. But you can't hear it when your mind is overcrowded with the voices of others. You must quiet the world long enough to let your inner guidance rise to the surface. Some of the world's greatest thinkers, creators, and leaders practice silence regularly. They understood that creativity doesn't grow in chaos. It grows in calm. Albert Einstein used to take long, silent walks when working through complex problems. Gandhi observed a day of silence every week to restore clarity and discipline. Even spiritual teachers throughout history From Buddha to Jesus, withdrew into silence to find divine direction. Silence is sacred because it reconnects you to something greater than yourself. It reminds you that there's wisdom flowing through you, but you can only access it when you stop trying to control everything and start listening deeply. Silence also teaches humility. It shows you that not every moment requires your opinion. Not every situation needs your voice, and not every problem is yours to solve. When you practice silence, you learn to step back and observe. You learn that real strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet confidence. Sometimes it's choosing to listen rather than respond. Sometimes it's walking away instead of arguing. That's what silence gives you. The ability to pause before reacting, to think before speaking, to lead with wisdom instead of ego. In relationships, silence can be just as powerful. When you listen in silence, you hear beyond words. You start noticing tone, emotion, pain, and joy in ways you missed before. Silence allows empathy to grow. It helps you understand others without judgment, without the need to prove your point. Because sometimes people don't need your advice. They just need your presence. They need to feel heard. And you can't give that if you're always speaking. True connection begins when two people can share silence comfortably without needing to fill it with words. That's when understanding flows. There's also a spiritual side to silence. In the quiet, you begin to feel the presence of something greater. Call it God, the universe, or your higher self. You start to realize that you are part of something vast and sacred. Silence allows you to experience gratitude on a deeper level, not as words, but as a state of being. You feel thankful for life itself, for breath, for peace, for the simple act of being alive. Silence is where faith becomes real. It's where you stop just believing in something greater and start experiencing it personally. You don't need to hear God's voice booming through the clouds. Sometimes his voice is the silence itself. Steady, patient, full of peace. Silence can also serve as a reset button for your mind. When your thoughts are spinning, your emotions are high, and your stress is climbing, silence offers you a moment to breathe. It's like pressing pause on life so you can regain perspective. You can step out of your emotions and observe them instead of being consumed by them. This is where emotional intelligence begins. When you learn to sit quietly and name what you feel without letting it control you. That practice builds strength. It teaches you to respond from wisdom instead of impulse. Many people think silence is boring, but boredom is often the gateway to creativity. When you stop filling every moment with stimulation, your mind begins to wander. And that's where ideas are born. Some of the most innovative thoughts appear when you're not doing anything at all. When you're in the shower, walking alone, or simply sitting quietly. That's the magic of silence. It unlocks the deeper parts of your brain that can't work when they're being constantly bombarded by noise. But to truly benefit from silence, you have to be intentional about creating. You have to carve out moments in your day where you disconnect from technology, from people, from demands, and just be. Even 5 minutes of silence each morning can transform your mindset. It's in those moments that you center yourself, that you remind your mind who's in control. You, not your distractions. Over time, this becomes a form of discipline. You stop reacting to life and start living it consciously. Silence also refines your speech. When you learn to be quiet, you begin to realize how much energy you waste on unnecessary words. You understand that not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every argument is worth winning, and not every conversation has value. Silence gives your words power because it makes you selective. When you finally do speak, your words come from a place of thought and purpose. They carry weight because they come from someone who doesn't speak to be heard, but speaks to make a difference. You start to notice how much the world glorifies noise, the loudest opinions, the flashiest lifestyles, the most constant chatter. But true power, true wisdom rarely shouts. It whispers. The most grounded people don't need to prove themselves. Their calm is louder than anyone's chaos. And that calm is born in silence. Silence is sacred because it transforms your inner world. It helps you process your past, understand your present, and prepare for your future. It heals what noise tries to cover up. It teaches you that peace isn't found in things or achievements. It's found within in the quiet places of your heart. So learn to make peace with silence. Sit with it, breathe in it, listen in it. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. Your mind will resist. Your thoughts will race. But stay there, because the more you practice it, the stronger your awareness becomes. You begin to hear not just your thoughts, but your truth. You realize that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. There's a sacred rhythm to life, a cycle of speaking and listening, doing and resting, creating and reflecting. But most people get stuck in the first half, speaking, doing, creating, and forget that silence, rest, and reflection are just as vital. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give clarity when you have none. Silence refills your soul so you can return to the world stronger, clearer, and more intentional. In silence, you meet yourself. Not the version shaped by the world, but the version that existed before the noise began. That version is pure. It's wise. It's enough. And once you reconnect with it, you no longer chase validation or approval. You move with quiet confidence because you know who you are and where you're going. That's why silence is sacred, because it's where truth lives. It's where wisdom grows. It's where peace begins. And in a world that's constantly shouting for your attention, the one who learns to listen in silence becomes unstoppable. Silence is sacred because it builds strength in ways that noise never can. It doesn't give you the rush of excitement or the adrenaline of chaos, but it gives you something far greater: control, patience, and resilience. In silence, you discover the kind of strength that isn't loud or flashy, but steady and unshakable. It's the strength that helps you stand tall when life feels heavy, that helps you keep your peace when others lose theirs, teaches you how to bend without breaking. The world often mistakes silence for weakness, but those who truly understand it know that silence is where the strongest people are forged. When life throws challenges your way, most people react with noise. They complain, they shout, they panic. But the one who can stay silent, breathe deeply, and observe before acting, that person holds power. Because silence gives you perspective. It gives you the ability to pause before reacting, to analyze instead of explode. It lets you see the bigger picture. When everyone else is busy making noise, silence allows you to gather your energy and focus it like a laser. That's real power. The ability to stay calm in storms, to stay still when chaos screams for your attention. Like of a lion before it attacks. It's quiet, it's still, it studies. That's the strength of silence. Not the absence of motion, but the preparation for decisive action. Silence builds mental clarity. It trains your mind to separate emotion from logic. It teaches you how to respond intelligently rather than react impulsively. When you can stay silent under pressure, you stop being controlled by the moment and start controlling the moment. You learn that your energy is your most valuable resource, and silence helps you protect it. In silence, you also begin to build emotional strength. You learn how to sit with discomfort without immediately running to distractions. You face the thoughts that scare you, the memories that hurt you, and the emotions that overwhelm you. You learn that pain doesn't destroy you, it teaches you. Most people never grow emotionally because they never allow themselves to feel fully. They cover every ache with noise. Music, social media, conversations, distractions, anything to avoid sitting alone with their own hearts. But silence doesn't let you hide. It forces you to face what you buried. And when you face it, you start to heal. Healing isn't loud, it's quiet, it's subtle. It happens when you stop running and allow your heart to breathe again. The strength that comes from silence is also spiritual. In quiet moments, you reconnect with your faith, not through words, but through awareness. You begin to feel that you are not alone, that something greater is holding you. Silence gives space for your spirit to grow stronger. It allows you to release the noise of fear and worry and surrender to something bigger than yourself. Faith doesn't always speak in thunder. Sometimes it whispers, and you can only hear it when you're silent. That's why silence is sacred. It deepens your connection to God, to the universe, to your higher purpose. Silence is also the foundation of self-mastery. When you can control your tongue, you can control your mind. When you can control your mind, you can control your life. Too often, people lose opportunities not because they lack talent, but because they lack discipline. They speak too soon, react too fast, or let emotions drive their actions. But silence teaches you restraint. It shows you that sometimes saying nothing is saying everything. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response. Silence makes you mysterious. It makes people wonder what you're thinking, how you stay calm, how you remain grounded when others are falling apart. That strength to remain centered in a world that thrives on chaos. When you start practicing silence intentionally, you begin to notice your inner strength growing. The small things that used to frustrate you no longer control you. The opinions of others lose their grip on your emotion. You become less reactive, more intentional. Silence gives you the space to choose your battles wisely. You realize not every conflict deserves your energy. Not every criticism needs your attention. Not every challenge requires an immediate answer. You start operating from wisdom instead of ego. And that's the mark of true strength. The ability to stay calm when provoked, to remain confident when doubted, to move with purpose when pressured. There's also a discipline that silence builds, the discipline of patience. In silence, you learn to wait without losing faith. You learn that not every seed grows overnight, not every dream unfolds immediately. Sometimes silence is God's way of preparing you, shaping you, strengthening you. The waiting season might feel quiet, but it's not empty. It's working behind the scenes, building your endurance, your character, your foundation. The strongest trees don't grow in storms, they grow in stillness. Their roots go deep in silence long before anyone sees the results. That's how your strength grows too, quietly, steadily, beneath the surface. Silence also strengthens your confidence, because when you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you start believing in yourself. You stop seeking validation from noise, and you start trusting your own judgment. You realize that your work doesn't need to be announced. It's demonstrated through consistency, patience, and peace. Confidence that comes from noise fades fast. But confidence that comes from silence is unshakable because it's built on self-trust, not approval. The world often confuses loudness with power, but real power doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. The ocean doesn't shout, yet its presence is undeniable. The sun doesn't argue, yet it shines with unmatched authority. Likewise, the person who has learned to find strength in silence walks with a quiet confidence that speaks louder than words. You can feel their peace. You can sense their power. That's the type of strength silence gives you. Not the kind that needs attention, but the kind that commands respect. In silence, you begin to understand that endurance is not about noise. It's about consistency. You don't have to announce every move you make. You just have to keep moving. You don't need to convince anyone of your greatness. You just need to keep showing up. Silence trains you to work in the dark, to grind quietly while others seek attention. And when the results show, they speak for themselves. That's how real strength is revealed, not in the noise of intention, but in the silence of execution. Silence also strengthens your relationships, not by creating distance, but by teaching you peace. It helps you choose your words carefully, listen more deeply, and respond more lovingly. When you can stay silent in conflict, you avoid saying things that damage trust. When you can stay silent, misunderstanding, you give space for truth to surface. Silence shows maturity. It says, I don't need to win the argument. I need to preserve the peace. That's strength. That's wisdom. When you start embracing silence, your energy changes. You begin to radiate calm. People start to feel safe around you because your peace becomes contagious. You stop matching the chaos of others. You start influencing it with your stillness. That's what strong people do. They don't add to the noise. They bring calm to it. Silence gives you the authority to lead, not by dominance, but by example. And maybe the most sacred strength that silence gives you is resilience. The ability to rise again after falling, to rebuild after breaking, to keep believing when everything seems lost. Because in silence, you learn to listen to your pain without letting it define you. You learn that storms pass, that darkness fades, that wounds heal. You learn that you don't need to shout your struggle to survive it. You just need to keep your faith steady in the quiet. That kind of strength doesn't crumble when tested, it grows stronger. The beauty of silence is that it doesn't require perfection, only presence. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be willing to sit quietly and listen to yourself, to life, to God. Over time, silence becomes your armor. It protects your energy, your peace, your focus. It keeps you aligned with what truly matters and shields you from what doesn't. So the next time life feels chaotic, don't rush to fill the noise. Sit in silence, breathe, observe. Let your stillness speak louder than your frustration. Let your calm become your strength. Because true power doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from standing still when the world is spinning. That's why silence is sacred. It's where the strongest warriors are built. Not through battle cries, but through quiet faith. Not through noise, but through unwavering peace. Silence is sacred because it's the birthplace of creativity, vision, and clarity. It's in the quiet moments that ideas begin to bloom, where inspiration starts to take form, and where your imagination gets the freedom to breathe. In a world that's constantly demanding your attention, silence gives your mind the space to explore new possibilities without pressure or interruption. Every great idea, invention, song, or piece of art started in someone's silent space. A moment of stillness where the mind could wander freely and connect thoughts that seem unrelated. Creativity doesn't thrive in chaos. It thrives in calm. It's the silence between the notes that makes the music beautiful, and the same truth applies to life. Without silence, your creativity can't sing. It only echoes the noise around you. When you step into silence, you begin to hear the subtle whispers of inspiration that are drowned out by the world's noise. You start to notice the details that others overlook, the patterns, the connections, the small insights that lead to big revelations. Silence allows your intuition to speak, and intuition is the root of creativity. It's that inner knowing that tells you what feels right even before you can explain why. But to access it, you need quiet. You need to step away from the notifications, the opinions, the rush, and allow your inner world to unfold without interfering. Think about every creative genius you've ever admired. Whether it's a writer, artist, inventor, or entrepreneur, all of them have something in common. They value solitude. They understood that silence is not isolation, it's incubation. It's the sacred space where raw thoughts transform into refined ideas. Steve Jobs will walk alone to think. Beethoven composed in long stretches of solitude. Writers like Hemingway and Maya Angelou retreated to quiet spaces to let words flow through them. They weren't running from the world. They were connecting more deeply to it by first connecting with themselves. Silence becomes a soil where imagination takes root and purpose begins to grow. In silence, your mind shifts from consuming to creating. Most of us spend our days absorbing, scrolling, watching, listening, reacting. We take in so much information that there's no room left to form original thoughts. Silence changes that. It gives your brain time to process everything it has consumed and turn it into something meaningful. The human mind needs silence like a seed needs soil. Without it, ideas never germinate. They just scatter. Silence gives you the focus to take what you've learned, reflect on it, and transform it into wisdom or innovation. But silence doesn't just feed creativity, it refines it. It gives you clarity. It helps you separate what's essential from what's noise. When you sit quietly, you begin to question what truly matters. You realize which dreams are genuine and which are borrowed. You understand which paths align with your purpose and which just distract you. In that stillness, decisions become easier. Clarity is not something you find in noise. It's something you hear in silence. Because clarity isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing what to let go of. And silence teaches that better than anything else. There's something profoundly powerful about allowing silence to shape your decisions. When you don't rush to speak, act, or decide, you allow wisdom to catch up with emotion. How many times have you said something in haste and later wish you'd stayed quiet? How many times have you made a quick decision just to end uncertainty, only to regret it later? Silence gives you the patience to wait for the right moment, the right move, the right idea. It gives you the discipline to hold your energy until it's time to act. Because not every impulse deserves your action. Some just need your observation. In creativity, silence helps you move beyond imitation into innovation. When you constantly absorb the noise of others, you unconsciously copy it. You think their way, you create their way, you even dream their way. But when you cut off the noise and go within, you discover your own voice, that unique rhythm, that personal truth that no one else can replicate. That's where originality lives. Every artist, thinker, and leader who has changed the world found that voice in silence first. Because when the world is quiet, your soul speaks. Silence also gives birth to focus. Focus is the ability to direct all your energy toward one meaningful goal, and silence is the training ground for it. In silence, you practice presence, the art of being fully engaged, fully aware. You stop multitasking, stop chasing everything at once, and start giving your attention to what matters most. Focus is not about doing more. It's about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing it with excellence. And silence is what helps you identify that one thing worth your full attention. Without silence, you scatter your energy. With silence, you sharpen it. But silence isn't just external, it's internal. You can sit in a quiet room and still have a mind that's screaming. True silence means quieting your thoughts, slowing your mind, and listening deeper. It's learning to sit still even when your brain tries to rush. It's choosing to breathe instead of panic, to observe instead of react. That kind of silence takes practice. It's not something that happens automatically, but the more you do it, the more creative, calm, and centered you become. Because silence teaches you to be still enough to receive inspiration, not chase it. In those moments of inner stillness, life begins to reveal its secrets. You start to understand that you don't need to force things. The best ideas come when you're relaxed. The best answers appear when you stop overthinking. The best opportunities show up when you're ready, not when you're desperate. Silence prepares you for those moments by aligning your thoughts, emotions, and energy. It teaches you that sometimes doing nothing isn't laziness. It's wisdom. Because silence isn't the absence of actions of action. It's the preparation for powerful action. There's also a spiritual depth to silence and creativity. When you sit in stillness, you begin to sense that creativity isn't something you own. It's something you receive. Ideas, insights, and inspirations don't always come from logic. They come from beyond you. They flow through you when you're open, calm, and aware. That's why many creative people describe their best work as coming through them, not from them. They became vessels, and silence was the doorway. In the quiet, you make space for something divine to move through you. That's why silence is sacred. It connects you to the source of creation itself. But silence also demands courage. Because when you stop filling your time with noise, you come face to face with your doubts. You start to hear the inner critic, the fear of failure, the voice that says, you're not good enough. And at first, that can be uncomfortable. But if you stay in that silence long enough, those voices lose their power. You start to realize they were just echoes, not truth. You begin to replace fear with faith, doubt with direction. You learn that silence doesn't expose your weakness. It reveals your strength. Because creativity isn't about avoiding fear. It's about moving through it quietly until something greater emerges. The power of silence also extends to problem solving. When you face confusion, frustration, or a dead end, your instinct might be to do more, talk more, think harder. But often the solution comes when you stop trying and simply sit in silence. The human mind is incredible at finding answers, but it needs space. When you let go of control, your subconscious begins to work in the background, connecting ideas you didn't even realize were related. That's why you often get breakthroughs in the shower, during a walk, or right before sleep. Those are silent moments where your mind finally has room to breathe. If you learn to embrace silence as a daily practice, your creativity will flourish. Spend time every day away from screens, away from chatter, away from distraction. Sit with a notebook. Let your thoughts wander without judgment. Some ideas will fade, others will stay. Those are the ones worth exploring. Silence is like the canvas on which inspiration paints. Without it, your ideas have nowhere to land. Silence also gives you appreciation for beauty, the small, simple things that often go unnoticed in noise. You start to notice the sound of the wind, the pattern of light on the wall, the rhythm of your own heartbeat. And in that awareness, you find peace. You begin to realize that creativity is not just about producing. It's about perceiving. It's about seeing what others miss, feeling what others ignore, understanding what others rush past. Silence sharpens that perception, teaches you to slow down and truly see. When you live with silence as a part of your rhythm, you no longer chase inspiration. You live in a state of it. You move through life with clarity, with purpose, with grace. Your work becomes more meaningful because it comes from a deeper place. Your ideas resonate more because they're born from truth, not noise. That's why silence is sacred. Because in that quiet space, you don't just find ideas, you find yourself. You realize that you are the source, the vessel and the creation all at once. Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers, of inspiration, of life waiting to be expressed through you. And when you learn to honor that silence, you'll never have to search for creativity again, because you'll understand it's been whispering inside you all along. When you sit in silence after a storm of noise, you realize something powerful. Silence is not just a pause. It's preparation. It's not just the absence of sound. It's the birth of direction. You see, too many people listen to react, not to understand. They move without reflection, speak without comprehension, and act without conviction. But when you embrace silence, truly embrace it, you begin to hear things differently. You begin to see your purpose through a clearer lens. And suddenly your actions no longer come from impulse or insecurity. They come from a line. Silence empowers action, not because it gives you permission to move, but because it teaches you why you should move. When you are quiet, you hear your own heartbeat. You start to feel the rhythm of your spirit. You begin to sense what's been buried under noise, fear, dreams, hopes, and truth. That's where real power begins. Because action without clarity is chaos, but action born from silence, purpose. It has direction, it has weight. The world is filled with people moving fast, but going nowhere. They post, they talk, they hustle, but they're lost. Because they've confused movement with progress. They've confused noise with growth. They've confused activity with progress. But when you slow down, when you silence the chaos, you begin to understand what deserves your energy and what doesn't. There comes a moment in everyone's life when silence becomes your greatest teacher. It's that space between failure and comeback, between heartbreak and healing, between dream and reality. And in that space, you begin to hear the call, that quiet voice that says, this is your time. Move, not out of desperation, not out of pressure, but out of purpose. That's the kind of action silence bursts. Intentional, calm, unshakable action. Let me tell you something. Those who act without reflection often burn out. They move fast but crash hard. But those who sit in silence, those who listen to their soul before they leap, they move differently. Their steps are firm, their energy is grounded, their vision is anchored. They're not reacting to life, they're responding to it. There's a difference. Reaction is emotion-driven. Response is purpose-driven. And silence gives you the power to choose response over reaction. When you stop filling every quiet moment with noise, music, scrolling, talking, you begin to hear your intuition speak. And that's when your decisions become sharper. That's when you start trusting your instincts. That's when your action becomes power. You no longer chase things meant to distract you. You chase things meant to build you. You no longer move to impress. You move to prize. Because silence humbles you enough to know that you don't need applause. You just need alignment. The world tells you to be loud, to be seen, to stay on. But silence tells you to be steady, to be grounded, to be real. Some of the most powerful moves are made in silence. The greatest empires were built not by those shouting their dreams, but by those quietly working on them. The most successful people don't always broadcast their next step. They prepare it in silence, and when they move, the world feels the impact. That's what it means when silence empowers action. It means your energy is concentrated. Your moves are deliberate. Your results speak louder than your words ever could. You have to understand something. Silence doesn't mean inaction. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing what matters. It means working without distraction. It means listening before you lead, planning before you perform, grounding before you grow. It's about understanding that stillness is not weakness. It's strategy. Silence is where great actions are born, because in silence you build patience, discipline, and clarity. You build a foundation that doesn't shake when the world starts to roar. Think about the seed planted in the soil. It doesn't make a sound when it grows. It doesn't announce its struggle beneath the earth. It doesn't complain about the darkness. It just grows, quietly, consistently, purposefully. And one day it breaks through the surface stronger than anyone imagined. That's you in your silence. You're growing roots that no one can see, developing strength no one can measure. And when your moment comes, when you finally act, the world won't understand how you did it, because they never saw the silence that built you. We live in a time where people mistake silence for weakness. They think if you're not talking, you're not doing. But real power doesn't need validation. Real growth doesn't need applause. You can't hear the sun rise, but it lights up the whole world. You can't hear a heart heal, but it beats stronger than before. You can't hear faith growing, but it changes everything you do. That's the sacred power of silence. It transforms you in ways sound never could. When silence empowers action, it's no longer about proving something. It's about becoming something. It's about aligning what you do with who you are. It's about letting go of the urge to explain yourself to people who will never understand your path. Because when you truly know your purpose, you stop wasting words trying to convince others. You just live it. You let your consistency speak. You let your peace speak. You let your results speak. And that's when your action becomes unstoppable, because it's fueled by something deeper than noise. It's fueled by truth. Sometimes silence isn't chosen. It's forced. Life knocks you down, people walk away, and all you're left with is the sound of your own breath. But even then, silence can be your sanctuary, because it's in those quiet moments of pain that you learn your resilience. You learn to rely on faith. You learn to trust that even when nothing seems to be moving, everything is being prepared. You start to realize that silence doesn't mean God is ignoring you. It means he's working behind the scenes, setting the stage for your comeback. Every great leader, every visionary, every warrior has learned the value of silence. Before the speech, there's silence. Before the victory, there's silence. Before the breakthrough, there's silence, because silence is where plans are made, courage is built, and purpose is refined. You don't rush out of silence. You rise out of it. When you learn to sit still, you learn to move right. You stop running in circles. You stop chasing approval. You stop fighting battles that don't belong to you. And instead, you focus your energy on what truly matters. You move when it's time, not when the world says move, but when your spirit says enough. That's the kind of action silence produces. Action that's intentional, powerful, and unstoppable. So many people want to skip the silence and jump straight to the success. But silence is sacred because it's where you're molded. It's where your mindset is shaped. It's where your patience is tested and your purpose is purified. The silence is where you face yourself, your doubts, your fears, your truth. And when you come out of that, when you act after that, your movement carries authority. Your words carry weight. Your presence carries peace. Silence empowers action because it anchors you. It teaches you that you don't have to respond to every voice, every opinion, every distraction. You just have to respond to your purpose. When you do that, you stop being reactive and stop being affected. You stop moving from emotion and start moving from intention. And that's when life begins to change. So if you're in a season of silence right now, don't rush it. Don't fight it. Embrace it. Embrace this silence. It's not punishment. It's preparation. You're being strengthened, refined, and realigned for something greater. Don't break the silence with doubt. Fill it with patience. Fill it with patience. Fill it with gratitude. Because when you finally step out of that silence, your actions will echo with power. Remember, silence doesn't last forever, but what it gives you does. It gives you clarity. It gives you focus. It gives you strength. And when it's time to act, you'll move with a confidence that doesn't need noise to prove its worth. You'll move with a peace that can't be shaken, a faith that can't be broken, and a purpose that can't be stopped. That's what silence does. It empowers your every move. So the next time you feel stuck, the next time you feel unheard, the next time life forces you into stillness, don't panic. Smile. Because that silence might just be the sound of your soul preparing for its next powerful move. Silence doesn't stop you. It steadies you. It doesn't weaken you. It sharpens you. And when you finally rise, when you finally act, the world will realize what you already knew all along. Silence was never your setback. It was your strength. It was your sacred source of unstoppable action. At the end of the day, silence is not about doing nothing. It's about doing everything that matters. It's about mastering yourself before you try to master the world. When you come to the end of this journey, you start realizing that silence was never the absence of progress. It was the foundation of it. Every great transformation begins in the quiet. Every dream that ever became real started in the dark, in those moments where no one clapped, no one believed, and no one even knew your name. But you knew, deep down, you knew that silence wasn't your prison, it was your training ground. You see, the noise of the world tries to convince you that if people don't see you, you're losing. That if you're not loud, you're not important. That if you're not noticed, you're not growing. But that's the lie. Real power doesn't need permission to exist. Real growth doesn't need validation to be real. Silence gives you that power. The kind that doesn't beg for attention. The kind that doesn't crumble under pressure. The kind that speaks through results, not reaction. When you've been in silence long enough, you stop chasing things that drain you. You stop running after approval. You stop explaining your worth to people who don't value your energy. You begin to understand that your silence was never a weakness. It was a filter. It removed what was fake. It removed what was temporary. It removed what wasn't aligned with your destiny. Because silence doesn't just protect you, it perfects you. It molds you into someone who no longer needs to scream to be heard, because your presence alone commands attention. Think about the calm before a storm. It's quiet but powerful. It's still but full of energy. That's you. Silence turns your pain into purpose, your confusion into clarity, and your waiting into wisdom. It doesn't rush the process because it knows that anything rushed isn't rooted. You've been through seasons where you didn't understand why nothing was moving, but now you see. Silence was working even when you weren't. You were growing even when you couldn't see progress. You were building even when you didn't feel strong. When you come out of that silence, something changes and you don't just speak differently. You move differently. You move differently. Your steps become calculated, your focus becomes sharp, and your peace becomes your shield. You stop reacting to everything that happens around you because you've learned how to respond from within. You realize that your energy is sacred and not everything deserves access to it. You understand that silence taught you control over your words, your emotions, and your time. And that kind of control, that's freedom. People will wonder how you did it. They'll ask, oh, where did this confidence come from? How did you stay grounded through everything? And you'll smile because they'll never understand what your silence gave you. They'll never see the nights you wrestle with doubt, the mornings you prayed for direction, the hours you spent alone fighting battles no one knew about. You'll know that silence was your secret weapon. That while others were making noise, you were making progress. That while they were chasing attention, you were chasing alignment. Silence is sacred because it doesn't demand anything from you except truth. It doesn't care about your image, your followers, or your reputation. It only cares about who you are when no one's watching. And if you can stand strong in that silence, if you can face yourself, your fears and your failures, then nothing outside of you can break you. Because you've already faced the hardest part, your own reflection. You've already fought the quiet war inside your mind and won. When you act after silence, your movement carries purpose. Your action carries peace. You're no longer trying to prove yourself. You're trying to fulfill yourself. You understand that you don't need to shout about what you're building. You just need to stay consistent until it speaks for itself. You don't need to explain your vision to people who can't see it. You just need to live it. Silence has taught you patience, and patience will deliver what pressure never could. At this point in your journey, you start realizing that silence was never empty. It was full of answers. It was the place where you learned to hear God's whisper, the place where you rediscovered your purpose, the place where you learned that peace is more powerful than proof. You learned that you can't grow in chaos, but you can rise in calm. You learned that sometimes the best way to respond is not to speak, but to act. There's a deep kind of confidence that grows in silence, the kind that doesn't need applause. You start trusting your instincts again. You start believing in your timing again. You start valuing your solitude again. Because silence reminds you that not everything that's loud is strong, and not everything that's quiet is weak. The tree that stands tallest has the deepest roots, and those roots grow in silence. You've come to understand that silence is sacred because it's the place where transformation begins. It's where you let go of what you can't control and focus on what you can. It's where you stop being busy and start being intentional. It's where you stop reacting to life and start designing it. And once you've lived through that, you'll never fear silence again. You'll welcome it. You'll protect it because you'll know it's where your power lives. The truth is, not everyone will understand your silence. Some will mistake it for distant. Others will think you've lost your drive, but that's okay. Because when it's time to move, when it's time to act, your results will speak the language silence taught you. Focus, discipline, and peace. You'll realize that you don't need to tell your story anymore. You are your story. You're the proof that silence was sacred, that quiet time wasn't wasted time, that every silent season was preparing you for a louder purpose. So, as this journey of silence comes to a close, remember this: silence is not the end, it's the beginning of strength. It's the soil where purpose grows. It's the calm that creates clarity. Don't run from it. Don't rush it. Rest in it. Let it refine you. Let it guide you. Let it empower your next move. Because when you act after silence, your actions echo with authenticity. They carry the weight of patience, the depth of understanding, and the force of purpose. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are being refined. And when the world finally sees what silence has built in you, they'll understand that your quiet wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Your stillness wasn't hesitation, it was preparation. And your silence, it was sacred. It was the birthplace of every strong, confident, and unstoppable move you would ever make. So keep your peace, protect your silence, and when it's time to act, let the world hear the roar that silence created inside you.